Hey, greetings, Fred in Alaska. I just wanted to share with you guys the joys of Alaska. Anyway, I'm gonna get home, get the hell out of this shit. It is adding up quick. It just started about, I don't know, 25 minutes ago, and it's already a couple inches deep of some fluffy, slippery bullshit. We'll continue this tomorrow in the daylight and see how much we ended up with. But yeah, it's starting to blow in. You know, it's Alaska. What do you do? All right, bye. Hey, greetings, good morning, it's Fred in Alaska. Thanks for joining me. I've been alluding to some little people stories past few videos. I have one to share with you today. This particular person allowed me to use their name. His name's Russ Black, at the Alaskan. Excuse me. A little chilly out this morning. Russ is from Non-Dalton, and that's where this particular little person, little people experience happened. This was back late September 1979. Back then we used to get our snow a lot earlier and a lot more of it. So how it went down is Russ and his siblings, he was one of 5. They were, their mom had to go to Anchorage for supplies and whatnot. Late fall, it's usually when we do it. If you don't have stuff come in on a grub stake and what have you. Not uncommon. Us kids, we were left with older cousins and older siblings all the time. Different world back then. So typically what would happen for him, as far as what he explained to me with him and his siblings, is once it started getting dark, it was time to go to bed. That's just how it was. You got to understand, some of these smaller villages, there's a lot of poverty and whatnot, and they had kerosene lamps and like little propane stoves and what have you at the time. They were staying in a hut house, but it had just been built. Doorknob wasn't in it yet, so they had this little string contraption with a 16-penny nail to keep the door shut. So in case the wind blows, you know, you don't want the wind blowing in your door when you're trying to stay warm. So they're all in bed. It was starting to get dark, similar to what it is now, but indoors it's, you know, it's a little darker. And as they were all laying there, Russ and his siblings were listening to his older sister tell them a story, a bedtime story, before they went to sleep. His younger sister was next to him on the edge of the bed, and this is just a small 2-bedroom hut house. Imagine one of those little green Monopoly houses elongated a little bit, with 2 bedrooms, and then the rest was a living room and a kitchen. Not very big. He pointed out that there was 4 little steps coming up onto the windbreak and into the house. They had all just gotten in there. They were all just chilling out, listening to the story or whatever, and they hear the snow machine out front, someone trying to start it. Now, there had been a fresh import of some alcohol into the village. Unfortunate, but that's just the way it was. And the kids assumed one of the drunk neighbors was screwing with the snow machine, so they thought nothing of it. They laid there quiet. They're little kids. They're not in a position to be of any, they couldn't put up a very good protective front. They're all little. So as they're laying there, their only defense was to be quiet. And so they're listening, and again, this door was held shut by a little tied off string, 16-penny nail. Not much to it, but it was tied on the inside. And if anyone's ever seen a door without a doorknob in it, there's not a very big hole to be reaching in messing with anything. So as they're sitting there, they hear, he said it sounded like boots come up the steps. He heard it clearly, 4 distinct steps coming up. Bump, 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 bump. And there was a slight pause at the door, and then they heard that door open. He doesn't know how it opened it or whatever, but it opened. And this thing comes right on down the hall. They heard it clearly. Thump, 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 thump. And just as it was getting to the doorway, they had a sheet hanging in place of a door because the doors weren't in yet. So with that sheet hanging there, this thing stopped right outside the room. Now, these are 5 little kids lined up in this very small room on a very small bed, and they were quiet as a church mouse. That was their only defense, was to be quiet. As they're laying there, from how he explained it to me, which is just creepy as hell, once it sensed them on the outside of that door, it attempted to be quiet then. Predatory. Slinked into the room real quick. Now, it's going to take me a lot longer to explain this to you versus how it went down. This thing slinked into the room. They're all laying there petrified, pretending to be asleep, and he was trying to watch with his eyes squinched, but looking through his eyelashes, basically. They're all laying there. This thing slinked like he said it moved like a cat would, making as much distance as quietly as possible until it was right up level, right next to the bed. He said this thing was 3 foot tall, very dark complected. He was squinting, so he couldn't really make out finer details. It was just dark. He said one thing that stood out is when it was kind of looking around, he noticed the nose wasn't like a regular nose. It looked more like the beginning stages of Pinocchio kind of deal. Now, as they're laying there, quiet as can be, this thing was staring at him. He said he could feel it looking at him. Now, it started turning its head side to side, kind of assessing what it was looking at with the kids laying there. And that was too much for his little sister next to him. She jumps, flips out, flinging the blanket. Who in the hell are you looking at, kind of thing. And it was, boom, gone. They heard every step, but it was so fast. Faster than he's seen anything move. So they were quiet for a minute. They heard it run off. And then commenced to go back and out, shutting, tying off the door again. This is not an uncommon story. Just a creep factor. You know, when I was talking to Russ, I got the serious creeps just thinking about this. He says 3 foot tall. This thing, the way it slunked into the room, just real. I think it's more realizing the predatory nature of what went down. Because even as a little kid, they sensed it. They sensed that it was nothing good was about to become of them. And thankfully, his little sister had enough gumption to just fling the blanket, freaking out, because this thing was kind of cocking his head back and forth like a dog would, just assessing them. And again, he said it was all dark features. He couldn't make out any eyes or anything like that. Just the weird kind of sloping shape of the nose. It was way different. I asked him, was it walking in boots? Because he had mentioned it, you know, the thunk thunk thunk, but you know, they couldn't tell. I asked him if it sounded really heavy, and it just sounded like the hollowy kind of sound when you hear someone walking on wood floors with boots, that type of thing. He also mentioned that going towards Iliamna from Non-Dalton, the mountains are behind Non-Dalton, and they run, I guess it would be southeast towards Iliamna, and there's a certain rock crop, like an outcropping of rocks in this particular area, just down a ways from the village where all his elders told him that the hairy men stem from and the little people come from. So growing up remote, it's really hard to wrap your mind around some of these experiences, because it's like, what the hell, you know, a little person, you know, they knew everyone in the village, and it was no one they knew. There's other stories of them being mischief, stealing stuff from the smokehouse, Similar activities to what the hairy man does. A hairy man will steal all your fish, piss it off, it'll collapse your smokehouse, just a whole litany of different things. But there's something really creepy about the little people stories. Mike from a remote village shared with us what he saw. The little people looked like little kids running off, you know, which was witnessed by him and several other of the village members. There's another one I want to share with you. It comes from Walter and Simon. They were near the Alaskan mountains, and I asked for clarity and he didn't want to give it, so I didn't push. So we'll just leave it at that exact location type thing. Well, they were out on a bear hunt. They were looking for a big bear, and they had been searching and scoping for about 2-3 days. They came up into this small little alpine meadow, and they decided to hunker down there for the night and see what comes around. You know, maybe they'll find a bear going up to find a place to hibernate, den out, whatever. So they, you know, they had a game plan. So they make a small fire, and they're camping for the night, basically. Well, his brother Simon wakes up Walter halfway through the night because the aurora started above them. They saw the aurora borealis dancing, and his brother thought it was the coolest thing, and he didn't want his brother to miss it. So Walter sits up, he kind of assesses, he's like, yeah, that is pretty cool, because you know, they had the purples, the greens, the reds. They were mesmerized by the auroras, which I've seen them. They're beautiful. When they do dance, they dance right above Hatcher's Pass here, and I can look out my front window and see them. So I'm a little spoiled when it comes to that. Well, as they're sitting there noticing it, they look over towards this kind of a bold, kind of a canyon, kind of leading up into the mountains. It was like this bold valley, and they noticed things tumbling down the mountain. They thought, oh, a small landslide, you know, let's be aware in case there's more snow than we realize up there and we may be in an avalanche chute or something. Let's just be aware. So they're watching, and his brother is trying to use the binoculars to see this. And as they're watching, these things are coming closer. There's about 6 or 7 of them, and they look like just little black dots in the darkness and the snow and the moonlight reflecting off the snow. So they're just kind of intrigued by what is that moving, you know. And so as they're sitting there, these things get closer and closer, and they're just about to where they're going to come down into the alpine meadow where they are. Because you got to understand where they were up on a higher alpine meadow, and they were virtually at the mountain was right there in front of them. I mean, literally right there. So Walter gets the binoculars from his brother, because his brother says something's wrong here, and he looks through and he says what he saw was tumbling down, and then it looked like 2 of the things tumbling were kind of flipping each other back up. So he's trying to get a better look. So what he saw were these little people, and once they would tumble down the hill together, making this weird noise. He assumed it was laughing and playing. When they would tumble down, one would grab the hands of the other one, fling it over, and they were basically flinging each other to get back up the hill. Instead of walking up, one would fling the other one up, and then vice versa. So they watched this for a good hour and a half, until his brother Simon stands up and screams, "Hey, over here," right? Screams at him, "Over here." Well, that did not sit well with these little people. As soon as they screamed that, all movement stopped, and all of a sudden there was little like dust devils of snow. He said it looked just like dust devils. There was plenty of moonlight. I'll get an example sometime this winter when there's a full moon in the snow, just how bright it can be out here because of all the snow on the ground. It reflects the light. It's pretty bright. You can see for a good distance. So in essence, they're watching these little whirlwinds of snow, and poof, they all disappeared. And that comes from Walter and Simon. Again, that what Russ shared with me about the little kids in the bed, and it's slinking in the way it's slinked into the room, just creepy as hell. And props to his little sister for not having it. I guess from what he said, just it cocking its head side to side like a dog would out of curiosity, that just, she couldn't handle it. She flipped out and the thing ran off, thankfully. But I want to thank Russ Black for sharing that. what happened with him and his siblings, and I want to thank Walter and Simon for sharing their little people experience. I have a bunch more of these. They'll be interlaced with the other hairy man encounters or whatever, but I want to thank you guys for joining me. Dave's doing some updates to the website. They should be complete soon, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.